Hello, welcome to Nakti by Kali J.N.S. And today, man, we really got to talk about strategic planning versus techniques. Now, I have been seeing some extremely disturbing things, and it has become quite clear to me that in your intransigence to dismantle a system, you don't have a plan to replace it with. And let me land, I promise we will get to some solutions, and it's not going to be, feeling like you're getting scalded. But this video is going to be extremely important. It is the one thing that you have always missed as a people, and that is strategic planning and understanding the difference between that and techniques. And this is in lieu of the protests and the riots. So the protests and the riots have been going on, it's about a week and a half now. And again, I don't have any judgment of that. I have briefly spoke about what I feel about it. I feel it's just merely a technique, and I'll get into why I say that. And now we have been seeing, the things at the protests, such as the kneeling, the telling of the police that you love them and respect them, and then getting thrown in jail, the dancing at the protest for no apparent reason. Black men have been dancing and, in celebration. And that tells me that, for one, none of you are ready. You're not ready to understand what it truly means to dismantle anything. And two, the situation that you are in can be easily co-opted as far as its narrative if you don't stay strategic and focused. Again, I say this, and you really need to understand that if you cannot answer this question, then you really want to rethink everything, and rethink it very quickly. You won't have, I would say, about a week to do a lot of research to get caught up. So answer this question. If you dismantle the system, what will you replace it with? And don't say, oh, don't give me the Neely Fuller, we're going to replace it with justice. What does that mean? You do know that's not an objective that is concrete or can be measured. You actually need to plan, what does that look like? And write down, what does that specifically look like for you? So if you give the very abstract objectives as far as your answer to this question, that's not going to cut it either, because then you're just stalling and wasting time and being delusional, and everything's going to fall. So right now, you have the floor. The whole world is doing these protests. The whole world is focusing on you, Black American. And more importantly, if you fail to strategically plan during this time and you continue to riot, say, for instance, you're rioting and things are actually toppled over. So that means that there's inconvenience. And if there's a plan, and there is a willingness to sacrifice, not just from Black women, by the way, trust me, nobody will mind that inconvenience, because the goal is so palpable. It wouldn't matter, We're not there yet as a people. And I know that sounds mean. I simply say this out of love, because revolution is serious. And even if it's not revolution, dismantling or redoing, or if we want to put something fuzzy on it, it's serious. And in lieu of the writing, we have these young children. Because honestly, the only thing I really care about is the young children. But Black women, I really need you to understand that this can become very dangerous for you, because if they defund that police, and you have a group of people who cannot focus and strategically plan for nothing, whoa. And we'll get into what that looks like for you later down the line. And so this video is going to be for very young Black men. And I know you say, well, why isn't it just not for Black men, period? Because anybody over 40 and 50, for one, they're not going, it's just a lost cause. To be honest, I would not show this even. I would not show this to anybody over 30, not even over 25. And I'm very serious. So this video is for very young men who are still teachable, because regardless of where you're at in your life, it is always important to remain teachable and to be ready to absorb wisdom. This video is also made for Black women with young sons and for Black women, period. And you want to absorb the information in this video because there's going to be a huge segment of our population that is going to continue to riot and protest with no strategy. And what's going to be the outcome of this? You know, so we got to be really serious about that, and we got to be ready to pivot and adapt very quickly and succinctly and with a very pragmatic plan. Okay, so this video is for you. If you are a guy and you're over 18 and I sent it to you, say like if you're under the age of 25, you're not yet 25, but I sent this video to you, I meant it with no harm, and I really need you to get the information too as a man, because the information that I gonna share with you about strategic planning comes from a mixture between business management, business enterprise, as well as military. And this is very important information because this is the one aspect of any of our fight for equality that in 100 years there has been no actual planning. The most we have gotten was, I want to say, maybe the Nation of Islam, but then you know how that turned out, and then I want to say, I think that's about it that I can think of on hand. The Black Panthers, believe it or not, they did not have strategic planning. I read a lot of their information, and that's why it's so easy for them to get infiltrated and dismantled. It was nothing. Like, it was literally letters written to each other and said they came from this person and they came from that person, and that literally destroyed the Black Panthers. It was just like clockwork. But what I want to say, and I'm getting on a tangent, is that it has been very easy to, with the blow of wind, dismantle many of the things you have planned, and it's because it has not been strategic, and it's because it's usually been a technique. It has usually just been a technique. So we're gonna get into those differences, and again, I say all of this with love. Black woman, I need you to not be so defiant and stubborn, and I need you to listen. And first, we want to start with some sort of admittance that something has seriously went wrong in the child rearing of Black children. Okay, and the lack of the nuclear family and the devaluing of Black children and Black women has severely damaged our response into understanding this system in which we are under. So if you can't strategically plan, you're going to find that a lot of the issues that you are seeing can literally fall by the wayside. Another thing that contributed to our lack of strategic planning was the overthrow of the Queen Mothership by Black men, which directly impacted our descent into colonialism and slavery, and has a lot to do with the complacency that we see. Because the Queen Mothers were in control of setting strategy, actually. Before a king or a chief could make a decision, he had to go through oracles and usually about 3 Queen Mothers and some elders. He wasn't just able to make sole decisions. And before I get into what strategy planning is, because I don't want you to go and take this information and think you about to convert every nigga on the street in the block or wherever they at, because you're not. You must accept that the majority of our community will not build or strategize a damn thing. They will not. And that is why the focus is on young men and Black women and the young children. So don't think that you're going to be able to show this to your uncle that's damn 35 that got out of prison or owns a trucking company, and they're going to absorb this information, because they won't. They're not going to give a damn. The epigenetics, it's just too late for them. And there will come a time when you have to rebuild everything. And it will only be a small proportion of you that can even have the intellect, wherewithal, and ability to do it. The rest will be disintegrated by the universe itself, and they will perish from a lack of knowledge. And if you're going to dismantle something, you better have a plan to put in place. And raw emotion is good for like the first or 2 days. I'm telling you, there's people up the top, there's elites at the top that are planning and plotting on us right now. Where all you doing all this jumping around and dancing at the protests and marching and loud mouthing and getting shot by rubber pellets in your head and shit, getting your eyes knocked out while you doing that, and you all emotional. You better believe it's some big wigs at the top plotting, planning, strategic, like literally right, like coming up with a whole scenarios in their head about what they gonna do to you. And if you're not ready for that, and if you're not thinking like, okay, what could this, we gonna do all this? I see Dior fucked up, Chanel got raided, Louis Vuitton raided, Mac is raided, Apple is raided. All these things that y'all done took, whites and blacks, because it was mostly whites that was going into vans and going into surfer stores and stealing damn surfer boards and shit. Y'all doing all of that, and you think that there's not a plan being enacted on your ass. So we gotta get serious. But I'm not about to make up no plans for no grown ass men. They should have been doing that shit. I was born into this system and I had to figure it out, and I'm always willing to help, but I'm not. I know that there's karmic retribution. I know that a lot of y'all on fuckery, and I'm not about to sit up there and stick my neck out on the line and then y'all throw me to the wolves. So I will make this video one time, and if it falls on deaf ears, so be it. Don't say that colleague J.N.S. never taught you niggas something, okay? And I'm gonna say this to the men, and we gotta get to our definition. Men, young men, because you're young, you're under 25, or your majority you're gonna be under 18 who see this shit. Don't get embarrassed from having to learn from a woman, because during the Queen Mothership, it was the women who had the knowledge and taught, the oracles. And back during the Queen Mothership, whether it was male or female, whoever was fucking smart was allowed to teach. Whoever just had it in their spirit was allowed to show their gifts, because since you have overthrown the Queen Mothership and call yourself leading and copying the European society of patrilineage, where the hell has that gotten us? What are the results of that? Okay, so clearly something went wrong. So now let's get to the definition of what a strategy is. And please don't think I'm scolding you. I'm really not. I have to be hard on you. You need to be ruled with the iron fist these days, because if I was sit up there coddling y'all, I would get devoured. The whole community would get devoured. There's no more time for no coddling. You have to hear it straight, no chaser, okay? So just know that I love you in spite of my ranting, okay? So here's the definition. Strategy comes from the Greek word strategia, and that means to lead the army. It's a military term. When the word strategy was applied to the real world, the definition got muddled and not really understood. So there is only one reason to need a strategy, and that is because there are limited resources. So as we know on planet Earth, there are no unlimited resources. So if you are trying to make change, you will need to strategize based on what current abilities you have and what current resources you have. So you're going to need to think about what you have access to, what are your abilities, and what are your resources, for one. So the final definition of strategy that I'm going to give you is that it is making choices on how to focus our scarce resources and abilities on the few things that matter most. So my question to you is, how will you concentrate your focus to achieve your objectives? Okay? And strategy is also about sacrifice. And what will you give up? And this will determine how you will win. So we just went over that. It's about making choices on how to focus our scarce resources and abilities. So what is a choice? And to be very succinct and short and to the point, a choice is what you will not do. It's as simple as that. Okay? So when you're making your choices on how to focus your resources on the few things that matter most, and we know the things that matter most for Black people is a just society, a society in which Black women, Black men, Black children can thrive, you know, just living at peace and having our human rights acknowledged, those type of things. So those are the few things that matter most. And also economics, the economic building and infrastructure. So in order to have, depending on what society you live in, we live in a capitalist society, so we need to understand that the few things that are going to matter most to us is the clothing, shelter, the housing, equality, peace, the ability to thrive, and the economic infrastructure. Okay, it's as simple as that. So when you're making your choices about what you're not going to do and what you're willing to give up and what you're willing to sacrifice, you need to think about very specifically, what will you not do that would actually verdantly contribute to getting your goals done. So for one, when we talk about during this time, you can decide that you would not be cowardly. You can decide that you would not fold. You can decide that you would not squander money, that you will not sabotage the progress of other Black people. Simple thing. What will you not do? We will not tell our plans. You know, we will not, those type of things. And what are you willing to sacrifice? So the 3 following questions that I'm going to give you will determine your organizing ability in regards to strategy. Number 1, what will be our key priorities? Number 2, where will we compete and what is our aim? That is very important. Number 3, how will we win? Number 4, how will we adapt as the environment changes? That is a very important one. So as you're out here, you know, you're doing your protesting and marching, and now you have to do your strategic planning. How are you going to answer these questions? Where will you compete and what is our aim? Obviously, you will most likely be here in America competing, and your aim would be, once again, some sort of economic infrastructure, since you are in a capitalist society, unless you're going to dismantle that, which you're nowhere near that, by the way. But what is your aim would be equitable economic infrastructure for Black Americans. And what will be your key priorities? Then you want to determine how will we win. So answer all of these questions. And whatever your goal is, even if you start using this information I'm giving you in pocket communities, and it's not on such a abstract level or just on such a macro level as far as the entire community, because it doesn't have to be like that. This can just be used for business, you know. But even if it's pocket communities where you have like-minded individuals that decide to build, you want to answer these questions. So the next thing that you want to do after you understand the definition of strategy and have an idea of your organizing ability, and again, those were the questions that I gave you. I might have said that there were 3 questions, but I meant to say that there were 4. Those were 4 questions that I gave you. So you got to, once you have your strategy, you determine your organizing ability, and remember that strategy is just making choices on how to focus your scarce resources or abilities on the few things that matter most. That's all it means, okay? And then you need to determine your organizing ability, and now we're actually at the point where you need to do some strategic planning. So what do you do first? You must set your objectives. And to determine objectives, these following questions should be asked. What is our community? What should it be? What will it be? And these things should be action-oriented and operational objectives. So they need to be able to be converted into specific targets and specific assignments, because objectives can be measured. So if you just say, we want to replace the system, you know, with justice, that's not necessarily action-oriented in the sense of what gets you to that high-level goal. So this is where you need to actually think of, well, what does that mean? If you want justice, what does that mean? You need to vote at the local level, right? You need to start focusing on some sort of communal policing, so where your community can lessen police brutality. There's certain things, like it could be anything. I'm just throwing stuff, but it can be anything. We're going to pool our money together and buy land. That's an objective. And what it will be, so you have to think of your mission and your values, and what should it be. So all of those things you want to think of, you want to make sure that it's action oriented and operational. Okay, so just make sure that it can be measured. Whatever you say, it needs to be measured, not with like some damn predictive modeling algorithm or anything like that, but something that you can see progress. Because a lot of the times when you're doing your techniques, you're getting tricked into thinking that you're having progress, but it's not actually progress, because as we know, within the last 60 years, there has been a steep decline in almost every facet of quality of life within Black American households, and maybe even the broader society of Black people. And unfortunately, I'm not sure of the dynamics in Africa and the Caribbean or even Europe, so I can't speak on that for the most part. So set your objectives. And another thing I want to show you after that is you want to look at this matrix, because this is going to help you set your objectives, right? Look at this matrix. It has two axes. The horizontal one portrays certainty and uncertainty, and the vertical one represents the control and absence of control. So in these 4 quadrants, you can see your loci of control and certainty. Quadrant 1 represents things that are certain but outside our control. Quadrant 2 represents things that are uncertain and outside of our control. Quadrant 3 represents things that are certain but can be controlled. And quadrant 4 represent things that are certain and within our control. So when you're setting your objectives, keep in mind of this matrix. So say for instance, we talk about one of our objectives is to own a certain amount of acres for our community, to start some sort of housing blocks where we're building literal housing for each person. Who knows? Whatever it is. I'm just throwing stuff out there. You want to think of all of the elements and factors that would be within your control with certain certainty, and going counterclockwise, all of those things. So look at all these quadrants and put, when you think about zoning permits, when you think about business permits, certain, all of those things that you would need, you want to go through all of the quadrants and put them in there. Okay, for whatever those objectives were. And even for determining your organizing ability, the matrix could be used for that as well. So keep that matrix in mind. It's very important. Get it up in that subconscious brain of yours, and again, use that to set your objectives. Can't say that enough. And the reason why you would use this is because you would need to assess and evaluate your plan. And as a young boy or woman, you need to use it to strategize, and this will help you be agile in adapting your plans. So if you realize you're in quadrant 1, and you need to get to quadrant 4, you're going to see, it's going to become more clear to you what you need to do to make sure that things are certain and in your control. And if you're in quadrant if you're in quadrant 2, where you have no control and you are uncertain, you want to make sure that you can pivot. So that's why this chart is showing you that. And that's the only reason why it's there. So now this leads to strategic planning in terms of long and short range planning. When you do your long range planning, you want to keep in mind your objectives. And remember those questions that need to be asked for your objectives is, what is our community? What should it be? What will it be? So as you're doing your long range planning, you need to make sure that these questions, the answers to your questions, can be again measured, that they are actual specific assignments. And this is not about forecasting. In your planning, don't put things that it can be forecast it, because the future is not predictable. Because this is the thing where strategic planning and techniques get muddled, right in this part where people use predictive model algorithms as a form of strategic planning, and those forecasts are often wrong. As you remember, even say when they were predicting like how many deaths were going to be like in Africa of a certain disease, they said it was 300 million, then they had to come back and do 100 million, then they had to go back and say 30 million. They didn't know. Come on. And they were trying to make this plan behind the strategic plan behind predictive modeling. They were using that to be the plan of knowing how to navigate. That is that's felt from the start. So you don't want to do that, and you want to understand that strategic planning is the continuous process of making present risk-taking decisions systematically with the greatest knowledge of your future. So that means that you're going to have to study society. You're going to have to be extremely observant, and you're going to be sly like a fox, stealth like an owl. Okay, you need to really get your head out them clouds and get your ass out that grass. Okay, at this part, you got to study economics, industry, and other people's next move. So that is going to help you in your strategic planning. Okay, so again, you understand the definition of strategy. You understand that you need to understand your organizing ability by answering those 4 questions that I told you in the beginning. Then you need to set your objectives, right? Then you need to use that matrix that I showed you to understand what resources and abilities and control and uncertainty that you actually have when setting those objectives. And then you need to understand that in order to do all of this, as far as your strategic long-term planning, you're going to have knowledge of your future. And you're going to have to take present risk-taking decisions. And that means you're going to have to study society, economic industries, and other people's moves. And then organizing systematically to carry out those decisions by using that matrix that I showed you and your objectives that you have set that are what? Measurable and specific assignments. Okay? So we're almost done. Just bear with me. And here's one thing I want to say, because I know we said that the objectives need to be measurable. Well, one way that you can measure the results of your decisions against the objectives or expectations that you have is through systemic feedback from elders, the queen mothers, and the intellects, and trusted persons who are not connected to third parties who have conflict of interest, to infiltrators and agents. So as you're making these plans and you need to measure certain things, you're going to need systematic feedback rather. And that's where you're going to have this sort of council or organizing body or board of directors, whatever it is, that has a lot of inertia in their mind. And by that I mean intellect, wisdom, experience, because experience is so important, and they trust it. And if we may have to do videos on what that looks like, because then you get into council and actual board, and that will be very important for pocket communities. It would be really nice if our whole community could just understand at once the whole ideas of what I'm talking about, but I just know it's not going to be done. It hasn't been done in 100 years, and I would be a fool to think that can happen. So again, I want to say this one last thing, because I know that since I have this platform, I just do make these videos and get them out there, and you just need to apply what I say. You need to take that definition, black women and young black men, and you need to write out the specific plans for your individualized plan, or for plans if you have a group of people that you want to build with, or a group of people that you trust. And remember, I was talking about those pocket communities. If you have pocket communities that can benefit from this strategic planning, that would be great. Also for women who are out there doing that protesting, and for black people who are out there doing that protesting, and you need to understand what's the next step. This framework, because that's all it is. It's a theoretical framework that I just gave. I didn't give specific strategy. I just told you what strategy is, what versus techniques such as marching and protesting, and it's just a framework that so you would need to do the actual plugging in of what specific action items you need to do. Okay, so that's all this was, and it's up to every one of us to lead ourselves and to develop a new collective consciousness and let that collective consciousness lead us. Or what the modern day, like the black young people, they're saying the code of conduct. And I'm 28, so I mean, I'm not a spring chicken, but I'm not, a crone yet either. So, they're saying the code of conduct. I still say collective consciousness, but it's the same thing. So I know I came off so harsh at times. I said everything with love, and let's get to strategy planning for whatever that means for our communities, our pocket communities, and for our like-minded kindred spirits. And I'm gonna talk to y'all later. It's been a long one. I'll talk to y'all later. Bye.